Hello, once again. This is Marshall Sanders. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to those around the world or anyone else who's reviewing this. I thought I'd make this video. Still a little sleepy, probably a lot sleepy. I guess you can kind of see it in my eyes today. But I just felt I would get this video out uh, just on the basis of some comments today. I want to thank you again for joining me. Anyone who wants to join me on Facebook can probably find me under Marshall H. Sanders on Facebook. Also, you can also find me on American Patriots Against Tyranny on Facebook. It's a private group. Let me know that you have viewed my videos, and that would help me with the process of knowing how to identify you. Now, I'm still pretty sleepy, so I'm a little stuttery today, more so than usual. Just hang with me. I'll get to the point. Now, I was reviewing a post, and I'm glad it was least with regards to the things in which we're speaking about, namely the white matrix. And for those who have not seen the other videos, I suggest that you first view them, mainly the white matrix and the introduction to the white matrix, to get a better feel and understanding of what step we are on the process of me explaining what the white matrix is, how we can resolve it, and how we can build an actual good real world that supersedes and replaces that white matrix for the best of absolutely everyone. Now, if you don't mind, uh, I woke up to a comment this morning, actually an article. I would like to read what this article is, and please bear with me on this one. Now, this article says, um, Black Lives Matter replaces torn down statue with one of their own. Now, when I saw that, um, to me, that's silliness. It doesn't gender anything other than to say, hey, I'm here. Kind of obviously, right? You know, it's like replacing one quarterback with another quarterback. Sure, it's supposed to be for the benefit of the team, but the backup quarterback is going to say, hey, you know what? I finally got off the bench. I finally got my chance. Let me shine here. So, in a temporary sense, not a permanent tense, who cares? This should be a non story, right? Um, so, however, I guess I don't want to phrase it in a negative way, because you already know I'm not racist. I'm not anything. I love everyone. So this this statement is not as insinuating to my thoughts on race as any other thing. I'm just making a observation, not a judgment, if you will. But every one of the people who responded to that post, and this is someone else to put this post up, by the way, not me. Every single one of them, their race happens to be white. Another thing, every single one of these people who responded to this was angry and against this idea, which is fine, again. Another thing they had in common, however, was their animosity towards this article, and, well, rather, what the person in the article had done. Now, I'm not going to read all the comments or anything like that. I think you get the gist of that. Basically, they highly objected to this happening. And again, I've said many times. That's why I ask people to actually read my video, review my other videos. You understand? I don't care about the race issue. I'm not going to call you racist. You're not a racist automatically. You have to examine a lot of certain criteria to come up with such a um, very disgusting judgment on that. It's not something that you throw out on someone immediately, as opposed to through except through a thorough examination on whether that's true, because it's such a bad label to have. That yes, there are many races, sure, but to simply assume that something they did reflects them and makes them an actual racist as opposed to a member of the white matrix is unfair to them and yourself and anyone else involved. So let I'm going to try to put a couple of the comments down and just respond to it. Uh, but mainly, I'm going to just say um, the comments that a couple of people said and how I responded to it. How about that? Um, Once just basically say, let's tear it down. In other words, alluding to, hey, we white people tear it down. That's not a, this is a person whom I had prior interaction with, and he does have I wouldn't call it a white supremacist. I would not call it that. But because he's involved in the matrix, he believes that there's going to be a so-called race war and that whites should band together. Now, while that may sound white supremacist or racist or whatever, I believe it's simply a case of the white matrix. He believes in the illusion of something and he's trying to protect something. And so he's going to go back to those whom he feels comfortable with, not necessarily in objection to a person's color, but to how it affects his white matrix. So again, I don't like to put labels on anyone. I like to reserve that after careful study. Okay. So someone else put who paid for the statue? Soros. So the assumption, of course, is that, of course, that the people themselves, the organizers themselves, could not have paid for it. That apparently Black Lives Matter, who many of them are supported by the organizations, not the people, are supported by people like George Soros and others. So it's a reasonable question to ask. Another one says, "Take it down. Where's the statue?" Uh, Obviously, wanting to be proactively taking it down. Now, I brought all this up, seemingly saying, "Hey, Marshall, what does this have to do with anything? You're talking about the white matrix. I've been following you for a little bit here, and you should try to stick on the subject matter at hand, and or at least give us a better idea of what it is you're trying to tell us about this particular seemingly dumb article, which I would agree. It's normally something I go right past, but it comes on my news feed. I don't care. There's much more serious things to worry about. But I'm going to fly past that for the moment. With all the objections, I figured I'd put a comment to them that I'm not trying to toot my own horn or something like that. I'm simply, for those of you who are outside of the matrix, and for those who are coming out of the matrix, as well as for those in the matrix. So I'm trying to cover the whole field. I want you all to hear my comment because it's going to affect you all a different way, of course. But I was hoping to have this answer to everyone to understand so that all of you, in whatever placement you are in the matrix or out of the matrix, you have an understanding of how dangerous the white matrix is. Because we must confront the fact that our enemy is dangerous to us before we can take it seriously enough to arm ourselves and to be ready to conquer this very vile enemy of all people. And so that is why I'm actually doing this. So I want you to listen to my comment to this. And please follow me here. A little sleepy and my voice is a little less strong today, more raspy. Okay, so what I did is I put the laughing thing and I said, haha, I find it hilarious. And even more telling and hilarious what many of your reactions are. I said, in Philadelphia, they have a statue of an imaginary movie character, which is Rocky Balboa, in place of real heroes, but you have no objections. You have statues of slave owners who literally raped, murdered, etc., millions collectively, and have no problem with that as a statue. Now, one person of color temporarily replaces the statue of one of the proven objectionable people, and you are outraged. How do you think it felt for the victims and children of those victimized by the people represented in the other statues felt when they had to endure seeing you love and admire it for over 200 years? I personally believe the standards should be much higher to erect any statue in public with public dollars. Those who want to worship and admire such demons, and some understandable idiots, idols rather, should just buy the statue and erect it at home or a private club, etc. The white matrix is being torn down, needs to go now. What we all need to get together to replace it with is finally a real country with the promise of for all men. Sorry, didn't know how to read my own word. And women are created equal with no exceptions. We are all children of Adam and Eve, brothers, sisters, and cousins. Either be a part of building a solution to confirm that, or be one who hides in the illusion of the white matrix and watch your reality become desolation. It took 12 years of absolute chaos in the colonies after the Revolutionary War for the Constitution and the federal government to be negotiated. And it turned out well, at least for whites in this country and some others. Chaos in a moment does not have to end in chaos. If the tearing down is good, the builder can build a better because he is good. Only question, after it is torn down, are you a good builder or are you a bad builder? And that ends my comment on that particular subject. Now, I alluded to this before in one of my other videos, but the pain and suffering of the people of color and others, again, Quakers were persecuted for probably the longest time in this country. They were not enslaved, but the only real people who were out of the white matrix and into a very good light and reflection of creating all people equal, excuse me, slip of the tongue, had to endure so much evil from those who formed the white matrix. They were white, so you do not have to be black to be a victim of the white matrix. And even there are black members inside the white matrix. And so on and so on and so on. But I just ask many of you to try to understand, just to try to understand. It reminds me of many of you probably have heard, if you never even read this or find out about this, I'm going to go to the Bible. You've heard of something called the prodigal son. Even if you just heard the expression, you probably just heard the prodigal son. And the prodigal son was a story of I'll be brief. The prodigal story in the Bible was of a father that had two sons. And the youngest son said, "You know what, Dad? Give me my portion of the inheritance, because I can't stand this place. I want to go somewhere else." So the dad, and by the way, this in this society, that was an absolute insult to a dad to say, "Give me mine," when all of it belonged to the dad. But this was such a good man that he actually did that for his younger son. And of course, we know what happened. This younger son went out there and, he basically partied it up and he had nothing in a far land. And he was so poor that he hired himself onto a swine farm. And he was so hungry, he was so malnourished that he was hungry enough to want to eat the slop that the pigs were eating in their trough. And in one moment he came to his right mind and said, "You know what? There's no way I can come back to my father as his son. I mean, I've offended him. I've offended heaven. This is ridiculous. What I did here is inexcusable. But I know the servants in my father's house, they at least ate. They ate. They ate well. Let me just come back and hire myself on as a servant. See if he just bring me on at least as a servant." And so he went back, and while he was a certain distance away, his father saw him, the love of a father, the love of a parent. And he ran to him swiftly, and he grabbed him. And and the young man began his discourse saying, "Father, I don't deserve to be your son. Just hire me as a servant." And the dad just ignored him. And he told the other servants, "Hey, bring my best coat, kill the most fatted lamb, kill our most prized possession in terms of our food, and make a party. We're gonna have a party. My son was lost and now he's found." Now, I'm telling you the story because the interesting part of the story was the son is received back in the house. Everyone in the household is partying up and rejoicing, excuse me. And the older son hears about it and he's in the field. And the older son says, "I can't believe this. How could dad do this? I've been faithful. I've never went away. I didn't do none of this stuff. And yet he didn't let me throw parties like this for my friends. And, he didn't, all these other things. And he wouldn't even come in to the party." So his dad came out, and the son vented his anger. And the dad said, "Son, everything I have, everything I have belongs to you. Everything. It belongs to you. And I've refused you nothing. But," and here's the point I'm trying to get to, "try to understand. Your brother was lost, but now he is found. He was dead, but now he is alive. Could you imagine the pain that the dad woke up with every day? He didn't care about the money. He didn't care about the wealth squandered. He wanted his son. Those who have children, and mine is my only one at 26 years old as a young man, you understand. Every time you look at that child, that even if they're an adult, there's a love that just, it's not explainable to a human person who has never had it. And no matter what they've done, your whole world is in them being, uh, them actually being profitable to themselves and to the world. And you're very forgiving of their mistakes because you're looking at the end of the matter, not the process to get there. And so I went through that whole thing for those who had not heard the story. And also to come to this point where I was trying to explain in the first place. I want those who have not gone through this to try to understand the way a victimized people feels about this subject. If this didn't affect me at all, or didn't affect so many people at all, then why is it that we're responding and reacting this way? Think about that. If it really didn't affect us, whether you think it's a legitimate reason or not, why do you think we're reacting this way? And if I said to you, there was a congressman that your daughter went to work for, she just turned 18, virgin, she was raised up in the most admirable way by good parents, and seeing politics as a way to help change the world and better the world, you sent your daughter to that governor's location, maybe for an election campaign or something. And your daughter went missing. First, the horror that she's missing. Second is the things that go in your mind which could be happening to them, etc., etc., etc. A year later, you've come to find out, thankfully, that your daughter's alive, but barely. She has been raped, mutilated, destroyed in every possible way. To make the matters much worse, the one who did it was the senator. To make the matter much, much worse, the senator has videotapes of everything he did to her. To make it much, much worse, other people knew and watched and did nothing. To make it quadruple worse, you bring it to the police, and the police says, if you don't get out of here, we're going to do that to your wife also. Even more worse, if it can't get more worse than that, they actually do it to your wife also. Keep going down the hole. And then you finally get it into court. They laugh it out of court. And they erect a monument to this person and persons who did these things. And they put it along every one of your streets. And they put a statue in every single one of the areas in which you yourself and those who you have left of your family go. And they take pictures in front of them and love on them and call the congressman who did this and the others heroes. That is what it's like to be a person of color for most people of color, not all people of color in this country. Those affected directly, lineage wise, with slavery. That is what it's like to watch these statues erected of so many of these characters that we have in our public space. So I'm asking you to try to understand what it's like for us. For so long, you called people founding fathers and just ignored that these people were also rapists, murderers, and other things. Now, while we can't distract and say, well, they couldn't have not possibly been a good father to their daughter or something. Of course, I'm sure the daughter's going to say, hey, dad was a really good to me. But no son, daughter, mom, dad, anyone else should ever look at a few good acts and let it be overruled by evil. We should never find our heroes in someone we know is not only a proponent of evil, but a doer of evil. So that is why I wanted to make this clear that this is what we have to endure in this country when we see such nonsense celebrated. And when they are torn down, finally, who cares if it's by riot or by conscience of good people? Why would any father, anyone else who's victimized want to see the victimizers honored as heroes? Can't do that. And certainly I agree, though, that some people could have possibly gone overboard, possibly. I'm not sure. I would have to look at the record of all the statues that are torn down. But yeah, those who find it uh, bad and say, hey, you know what? We think those statues should stay, then buy them. I'm sure they're for sale. Buy them, put them on your property. You can worship them in as much as you want. Put them at your country club. Put them wherever you want. On public property is a way of saying this is in the interest of all the people. And it's not in the interest of all the people when some of those people were the victims of that particular person while they were alive. Now, the disrespect that is shown to people of color is, again, it's a part of the white matrix. It's more of the old adage, not racism, but out of sight, out of mind. Or as one ridiculous uh, question that philosophers sometimes say, which is an utterly ridiculous question, even on any matter, is if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? It's like stupidity. Of course, it makes a sound. Whether you heard it or not makes it, something completely different. But since people like so many exhibitions of wanting to remember history, how about we do something in comparison? Because there may be some of you who've read this and said, well, you know what? See, this for black people. They just can't let things go. Can't let things go. I'm not racist. Most of us aren't racist. Da 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 da. Glad you asked. Because that's a common reaction of those in the white matrix. May not be for all of you or any of you, but I'm sure you know someone who reacts that way. So let me give you an answer to that. We know of something called the Holocaust because it is really, really pumped around the world every day in every possible way as a reminder of how racism can lead to so much ill and hurt and crime in the world. We know about it because there are Jewish organizations. We know that there are American organizations. We know that there are German organizations. We know there are Austrian organizations. We know there are Eastern European organizations. We know there are Russian organizations. We know that there are Indian organizations. We know that there are organizations in the entire world that daily remind us of the evils these things can cause. And guess what? Rightfully so. But the Holocaust was less than 11 years, even on the deepest standard, 11 years. Are you aware of how many major museums just in the United States there are of the Holocaust? 16 major museums, and they're building more just in the United States. Here's a question. How many Jews were they put in concentration camps in America? If you came with a big answer that said zero, you'd be correct. Zero Jews were put in concentration camps in America. And yet America wants you to know the atrocity. And again, we got this one rightly, of what an atrocity that was. Rightfully so. But they weren't respectfully. They were not American victims. It, in fact, America helped liberate them. We still to this day give them $3.8 billion a year, despite them being financially wealthy enough to be able to afford things themselves. Congratulations, Israel, for that, by the way. But when we talk about actual American victims in this country, from both private citizens and the government, you say, forget about it. What museums? What statues? What reminders of the atrocity and to never do it again? Why? Or are you so delusional to not see the difference? One is white, one is black. And if that is, you say that's too simple of an equation, we can look at the whole. Why they putting we're at war, World War II against Germany and Japan, who are both allies in this War II. The citizens over here who are Japanese and they are American citizens are put in concentration camps. And we bring some of the highest members of the Nazi party. So much so that they were under the arm of Adolf Hitler and he gave them great titles because he said, "You have worked on a solution of destroying Jews, even more so than anyone else." And we brought them over here during the war under Operation Paperclip and gave them great lives here and their descendants. And I can do this all day of how, in the same kind of situations, the whites were treated 100% opposite as the black. And you both know this. We all know this. It was only 50 years ago that we had black and white bathrooms, people. You go into the white bathroom, you may be lynched. And you know what the cops will do? Well, they'd be the ones that's lynching you, by the way. They just have white sheets on. And even if you found out, nothing would happen. 50, just over 50 years ago. And as little as 50 years, I should say. Can you try, please, try to understand the point of view of people of color in this country? The only thing we've really received is victimhood and people ignoring the voice of like that father. Son, all you have is everything I have is yours. You still get to go to college. You still get to marry that great woman, great guy. No one's hindering you in the quote unquote white matrix society from doing those things. That's from the other people. But try to understand. Your brother was a slave, was murdered, had his children stolen, raped, pillaged, put down, vilified, called monkeys, lynched, castrated, have not received equality or justice for past crimes, even ones that we know right now. Emmett Till, and the ones who have basically confessed to doing it and still get off. Try to understand. Now, it's easy to tell someone else to just get over it. Move on. Would you, if that happened to you, just one person in your family? If it was your daughter, your son, whatever, down the line, your dad, your mom, your cousin, your aunt, would you move on? Many brave and good people have formed organizations when events like this has happened. Black, white, Japanese, Chinese, Asians of all kind of descent, members and races of the entire world have done this when these things have happened. Are you also going to spit on them also and say, move on? Why you never again? It happens to other people too. Whatever. And if not, why don't you do that to them? But so many victims of the bloodline, and even today in different ways, victims of the things that have happened from a criminal aspect, say, we've been victimized and we have not received justice. We have, our fathers have been, our parents have been victimized and we have not received justice. Our grandparents, and just keep going on the line, and we have not received justice. And you're telling me I should get over it and move on. But then, when one event happens to you, or someone in your community, or someone in your family, you say, stop the world and mourn with me. Let's do something about this because it affects your world. Well, the world is not yours, it's all of ours. And it's only all of ours because we have that same Father and we are His children. And whether you, as an older or younger brother or any other brother, feels that the younger brother or the older brother or any other brother disrespected the Father in you or not, you have no right at all to deny the Father the opportunity to be united with His Son. And if the Father wants to take out of His abundance and to show His love for that Son and just throw a big party for them and be extravagant with them, who was lost but who is now found, who was dead and now alive, then not only should you allow the Father to do that, but maybe it's time for you to try to understand and straighten yourself up and walk into that tent and say, Father, I may not appreciate my brother for what he's done, but I do appreciate him for making you a man who sorrowed yesterday for the loss of your son. And today he's made you happy to make you rejoice. Try to understand. Well, this is Marshall Sanders. I hope I was able to be instrumental to you, and that these lessons are something that you and I can grow to and through. In the meantime, I hope to make another video before I do some work later this evening. But if not, I will speak with you tomorrow. I pray you and your families are well. I pray that whether you have a statue or not a statue, that everyone that you love is being honored both in the household and outside the household. I wish all of you to be safe, and I'm going to speak with you all later if you will allow. Have a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening. Shalom.